Everyone has been convinced that they're a unique, special little butterfly and that their insight is invaluable.
Hi, this video is part of my series on the 7 deadly sins, basically how certain characteristics and trends are showing up in modern society and leading to negative effects. Not really anything about religion or sinning exactly. Today I'm talking about pride, which is often considered the worst of the 7, or like the root cause, and I could maybe get behind that. I think that believing that you're better or you deserve more is a predecessor to a lot of other problems. Just to be clear, pride is not inherently a negative trait. Being proud of yourself can be a totally fine thing. It's called having some self-esteem. But what I'm talking about is an excess of pride, which could also be like arrogant or self-obsessed or narcissistic. And I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like I have seen so much content about narcissism in the past couple of years. It's kind of like when Shane Dawson made that series about Jake Paul a while back and suddenly everyone was calling people sociopaths, or like the sudden surge of TikToks where any weird behavior that you do like has to be ADHD. So is talking about narcissism trendy? I do want to be clear though, when I'm talking about narcissism today, I am talking about it more in the casual way rather than a clinical sense. But regardless of how popular this topic might be, I'm not sure I'm convinced there actually has been a significant rise in arrogance over time, or if there's just a new communication funnel of social media that can make it feel like it's everywhere. Old people point to videos and like stuff like this and say that it's evidence of all younger generations are so narcissistic today. And I get where they're coming from, but who's to say if they had the technology we have today at their disposal that they would not have been doing this exact same thing 30 years ago or 50 years ago? Maybe they would. There's no way to know. Not that many years ago, there were loads of articles accusing millennials of being the most self-absorbed generation, the selfie generation, me, only caring about themselves. And I do still see articles like this floating around today. I think a lot of this criticism came from witnessing young people exist in a new space of online. Having smartphones and taking selfies is seen as being full of yourself. But what critics don't see is the teenagers alone in their room taking selfie after selfie after selfie and then reviewing all of them and trying not to cry because they hate how they look in every photo. Maybe young people were the first adopters of selfies and posting about themselves online, but it didn't take that long for it to spread to other generations. If you've been on Facebook lately, there is no shortage of old people selfies and them posting stuff about themselves trying to get validation and make themselves look good. So if we're being self-centered online, they are too. It just took them a little bit longer to figure it out, and it's on different platforms than millennials or Gen Z. As much as I want to brush off all of that criticism of calling young people conceited and self-important, unfortunately, I do think it really worked, and maybe a little too well. Like, millennials and Gen Z actually started to believe what they were being told about themselves and started to feel guilty. So in order to compensate, we have gone out of our way to be so modest, put ourselves last, and end up with crippling self-doubt, not self-importance. Even in the smallest instances, we will not stick up for ourselves. We have massive imposter syndrome, we downplay our wins, and overstate our losses. Self-confidence rates of teens and young adults today is pretty low. And it's really hard for me to believe that you can both have terrible self-esteem and be narcissistic, since narcissism is kind of based on thinking you're really great and really important. In order to make sure no one thinks we're full of ourselves, a lot of young people have tried to go in the polar opposite direction and turn to putting ourselves down and self-deprecating humor. Like, look guys, we're not narcissistic. We don't think that highly of ourselves. In fact, we hate ourselves. See? It has become completely normal and casual to call yourself a piece of trash just to get a laugh. Or like, to compare the responses of different people making a mistake. A narcissist would probably try to deny it.
You know what I say? If they don't treat you right, I don't call.
If they don't treat you right,
But I didn't
I
say
don't
that.
call.
I didn't
These are
say
direct,
that. No, it's
direct
such a-
quotes, sir.
Or blame someone else for why things went wrong.
People like Governor Inslee, he should be doing more. And your governor of Michigan, I mean, she's not stepping up. I don't know if she knows what's going on.
Or try and explain how their mistake was actually a good thing.
The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice.
But the response of so many millennials, I think, would be to overblame themselves for a mistake, to instantly jump to negative self-talk like, oh my god, I can't believe I made that mistake. I don't even deserve this job. I'm the worst. Like, I'm so stupid. I'm a complete embarrassment. But as long as I make these feelings known, at least no one will think that I'm arrogant. As with so many things, after spending some time on one side, society wants to swing back to the other. So the new trend, led by the next generation of Gen Z, is to go against that self-deprecating and practice self-love and self-care. We went too far with putting ourselves down. We gotta build ourselves back up now. And I would say that Gen Z is really showcasing this by embracing their different qualities and not being afraid to talk about things that make them unique. Like, I envision a 35-year-old gay guy has like this really dark story about how it took them years to accept themselves, and they were like fighting this internal battle of like trying to not hate themselves and start to love themselves. But a 19-year-old gay guy, I think, maybe is more likely to have come out earlier in life and accepted themselves earlier in life, and it just is less of a big deal to young people. And like I said earlier in the video, I am more than okay with people being proud of their unique qualities and loving themselves. There's a difference between pride and narcissism. You can love yourself and not be full of yourself. You can be posting online and not be narcissistic. You can even be a content creator and still not necessarily be a narcissist. I think one point I've heard as an example online of Gen Z being full of themselves is how they want to be a YouTuber as like their dream job. There is still plenty of teenagers that want to be other jobs like engineers and physical therapists. It's just that this new job of YouTuber has been added to the list. I don't really think that is that different than other performance artistic type jobs, like wanting to be a singer or an actor. And those have been dream jobs of people for a very long time. Like, is posting tech reviews narcissistic? Or like documenting your journey about making sourdough bread? Or recapping the latest trends of Fashion Week on your blog? Or all of the faceless streamers out there? Are they all narcissistic? There's so many different ways you can make content. I'm sure there are definitely some narcissists on YouTube and other social platforms, but just being a content creator, you can't bucket them all together and say that they're all narcissistic because of their job. Content creation gives people a chance to talk about their hobbies and their interests and find other people online who care about the same thing. And wanting to talk about your favorite things is not a narcissist thing, that's just a people thing. Everyone likes doing that. except for maybe if your favorite thing is yourself. And how much of young people posting about themselves online is being narcissistic or just wanting to fit in with the crowd? Like, if you don't have social media and if you don't post about yourself on it, you are outcasted by your peers. Or how much of the narcissistic behavior we see is a cover-up for someone's actual self-perception? For example, I am a very high-strung, anxious, easily paranoid person. But in a lot of different situations, I go out of my way to appear as laid back and casual and carefree as possible. Like, I'm trying to show the opposite of myself. Maybe you could be secretly very insecure and so unsure of yourself, but you put on this fake front and post on your stories all the time and post lots of selfies to try and throw people off your secret insecurity. But because we only see a small slice of what people choose to put online, it's really hard to know if someone is just pretending or if they actually are narcissistic. I still remember that story of Asina O'Neil, who was that Insta-famous girl who was a classic example. Everyone was pointing their finger towards her saying, oh, she's so self-obsessed, she's so absorbed in herself and her own gorgeous looks, posting hot photos of herself, like, oh, she's totally narcissistic. And then one day, she completely dropped off online, like disappeared. And when she came back, she let everyone know that she was so insecure. She had never, felt worse about herself or had worse self-esteem than when she was doing influencer things. So it was all a front. Her pictures were trying to portray something completely different from how she actually was. And maybe this is a really extreme example, but I also think of Eugenia Cooney. She posts pictures of her face and her full body on YouTube videos and photos and TikToks. She's smiling, she's posing, she's showing off clothes, and if she weren't so deathly skinny, you might be fooled into thinking that she has really high self-esteem and she loves herself, maybe even that she's full of herself. But we all know that it's an act. She obviously has an eating disorder, and due to that, she probably hates her body. But in general, it can be really difficult to tell the difference between someone who looks like they love themselves but is faking it and an actual narcissist who truly believes that they're the best. If there is one area where I think pride is definitely declining, it's young Americans and how they feel towards their country. Nationalism, aka devotion to one particular nation and putting it above all others, is rapidly going down amongst millennials and Gen Z. Nationalism is like kind of narcissism for countries, and for a very long time, the United States has done a very good job at convincing its citizens that they're the best in the world, which is pretty arrogant, and it also is not true. There is this quote from a movie called The Newsroom, which I will not put on screen to avoid getting copyrighted, but I will read it to you. I think some of these numbers are a little out of date, but the point still remains. There's absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, 4th in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. It's really hard to come to a decision of which country would be the best in the world because everyone has different values that they would like to measure that on. But I will say America did a good job at convincing people that the only value that really matters, or at least the one that matters most, is freedom, which is fine. It's a good enough value, but America is not the only free country in the world. And I think in large part to the internet and globalization, younger generations are more exposed to what life is like in other countries, and therefore are not so quick compared to older people to put America as number one best of the best. One of the problems with dealing with narcissistic people is that they have convinced themselves that they're so amazing, it's really hard to point out any flaws that they have or suggest that they should make changes about themselves. And I think that also applies to narcissistic countries. It basically leads to a lack of empathy and judging other people based on your own particular country's values, like ethnocentrism, which is probably one of the many reasons why the whole world is operating towards the dominant language, English, that the United States speaks, because people here are so self-important and stubborn that we all believe that our way is the best way. So this final point is something that really gets me frustrated, and I could talk about it for hours, but I've definitely noticed that a lot of people who are in positions of power exhibit narcissistic behaviors. And this would check out because narcissists have these delusions of grandeur about themselves, which leads them to seek out elevated positions in society, and their high self-confidence helps them to actually succeed in getting into those elevated positions. For some examples, I would say politicians, cult or religious leaders, and most definitely CEOs. A very common narrative among these people, particularly business leaders, is attributing their massive amounts of wealth and power to their own personal effort and abilities. Being a self-made man. Seems like every billionaire's story is about me, how hard that I worked, how much that I know, and my own blood, sweat, and tears. Why is it that I never hear them start off their story, or even include at all in their story? Well, I've been blessed with generational wealth that has allowed me to reap the benefits of it through no doing of my own. Or actually, there's been many other smarter, more talented people than me who have helped me along the way and are a critical factor in where I've ended up. Or just acknowledging plain, straight up luck. These are never on their list of talking points because these self-centered people are all subscribed to the idea of meritocracy. People with money and power are there because they're the best and they deserve it. It can be pretty comforting to believe this even if you're not a billionaire, because it's kind of similar to believing in karma. Good people get rewarded and bad people get punished. And that's what we want, but that's not how society operates. Bad things happen to good people, and amazing things happen to bad people every day. Random factors that can affect someone's success in life do not seek out particular people. That's the whole reason why they're random. Sometimes a single mother with the voice of an angel who pours her heart and soul into writing the most beautiful music will never, ever be recognized. And sometimes a lazy teenager whose parent happens to be a big shot at a record label will become a multi-platinum artist, even though they're not that good at singing. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you might not succeed because of external factors out of your control. And I know it really sucks to think about that. It's the truth, but I'm not going to go on too much longer about it. But the point I'm trying to make is this. Success has a snowball effect, so someone who starts out kind of narcissistic can become even more so, fueled by the idea of meritocracy. But even the most successful, prideful people in the world are truly mistaken if they only give themselves and themselves alone credit for how amazing their life has turned out. There's this kind of stereotype that is somewhat backed up by evidence that the most self-centered point you'll be in life is late teen, early adulthood. And you're just coming out from under your parents and entering life with this bulletproof sense of self, and you're developing strong ideals. It's probably the most narcissistic time of your life, but it's not exclusive to millennials or Gen Z or boomers. It's just a human thing. Older generations accusing the young, early 20s generation of being narcissistic is not new. You move into your mid to late 20s and the world slaps you around a few times and checks your ego, and you think, oh shit, maybe I'm not as great as I thought I was and I still have some more to learn. I think that the best case scenario would be that we're able to develop a reasonable level of self-esteem and be proud of who we are, but also realize that we shouldn't put ourselves on a pedestal above others. We can always try to be improving and still have empathy for other people, even as we get much older. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you could give it a like, and thanks for watching.